Hello, I'm your host, Giselle Gamby, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast, where together we'll embrace the plans we did not make yet, unfold businesses and lives that are so much greater in wealth in all ways than any business or life plan could ever achieve. My wish is that you make intuition your most trusted advisor. So buckle up, get present, and let's go.
To the universal supreme God, to the divine mother, to the divine father, calling in all of the ascended masters, holy gurus, divine beings, healing angels, the spiritual helpers, the beings of light, Carol, Giselle, and my higher souls and spirit guides. We humbly, warmly, and thank you for all of the divine blessings, divine love, purifying light, divine mercy and compassion. We humbly thank you for blessing the miraculous conversations and the transformational healings to occur in this sacred space. We humbly thank you for showering this out into the world for all to receive, to fill their hearts with grace and love, and to feel whole and complete with thanks and in full faith. So be it, so be it, so be it.
Thank you, Sami. I've got tears in my eyes. If the listeners could actually see our faces right now, they'd see that we've got the biggest smiles in our faces and we're just glowing, and we are so present here for those who are to listen to this episode. So I'd like to really warmly welcome you for the first time, Sami Howard, who just shared that blessing, which I actually will include in the episode, because what a way to start the episode. So thank you for that. So Sami is a dear friend of mine. I've known Sami for, oh my God, over 20 years. Over 20 years, I think it is. We met through our old hotel days. So Sami lives in Noosa, and she has a business called Ripple Healing, and she is a really powerful, beautiful, gentle, fiercely loving, and oh so compassionate woman who is a Pranic Energy Healer. And we've come back into our lives together and sharing another version, another expression of life together in support of Dr. Carol Haddad, who I'd also like to welcome back again. So Dr. Carol Haddad is an integrative oncologist who works out of Colorado in the States, but works internationally, and was Sydney born. You've heard Dr. Carol Haddad on one of the earlier episodes called The Intuitive Response to Cancer and Illness, where I interviewed Dr. Carol and also Natalie Symes. So it's so awesome to be back with you again, Carol.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Giselle. Thank you for the invitation to share the space again.
Yay. So I want to just share with the listeners how this happened. So Carol has generously shared one of her patients with Sami and I, who has cancer, and Sami and I have been supporting him, and Sami and I have been coming together once a month in support of him and other patients. And it was in that last conversation, which was just a couple of weeks ago, that we have just such a synergy, the three of us. And I just felt inspired. I said, how about we do a podcast interview, the three of us? And then what did you say to me, Carol, in response to that?
I said definite yes without hesitation. But then I said that I had kind of been thinking about it the week leading up to, or hoping for, another invitation. So it felt quite divinely timed.
Ask and you shall receive, hey?
Mm.
Yeah, beautiful.
Indeed.
And the words that come to mind from the last episode, which was powerful in itself, but the words that come to mind from your reflections to me a couple of weeks ago is that there's unfinished business. There's unfinished business in that episode. So we're back here again to complete that conversation and to go wherever it wants to go. I do know that as a result of that one episode that I interviewed you, that it felt like an energetic prescription. And I remember actually that one of the outcomes of that energetic prescription was that one of your patients listened to the episode and heard something about detachment and had heard about detachment and being detached to the outcome from other people. But in the way that she heard Carol speak to that in that episode, it really integrated within her. And then I can't remember the exact logistics of whether she contacted me or whether you contacted me. I can't remember, but I do know that, well, actually, why don't you finish the story?
So basically we were waiting for a result at the time, and we were waiting for an MRI result that would tell us the outcome of her treatment. And during that time, we had a consultation together, and I had encouraged her once again to seek your support. And so in exploring that, that's what brought her across the podcast. And she did have a listen to our episode. And it was in that podcast that she came to what she called an acceptance. So she released the attachment to an outcome and also accepted that whatever the outcome was going to be for her divine and highest good. And so the pleasing result was that weekend, or shortly after that weekend, the MRI result came back and she was clinically free of disease, which was just one of the best outcomes that we were holding the intention for together. And I'm just so delighted that she was able to listen to the podcast and come to that acceptance and freedom, because I feel that that's what catapulted the result that we were both intending.
Isn't that just the most incredible story? Oh my God. And when I heard that, and I'll go to you in a minute, Sami, sorry to cut you off, but I remember when I heard that, it just makes the podcast, like, even if that's the only thing that happened from the podcast, and I know it's not the only thing that happens from this podcast, even if it was that, it would be enough for me. Yeah. So we're holding space for magic here in whatever way that is going to transpire for the listeners, whether it's to do with illness or whether it's to do things outside of illness. Absolutely holding space for magic here. And speaking of magic, Sami, you wanted to say something.
I was just going to share with that. It's so beautiful to see the transformation in people and to see them going beyond the rational mind and the constraints that is all we do, is what we place on ourselves.
So that has just inspired had a visual turn up in my mind that will become a question now. And the visual is, if you, Sami and Carol, if you were at the end of your life and somebody who was really willing to listen was sitting beside you and they were asking you about illness and what do you know about illness and the cause of illness, and what do you know about the healing of illness, and you had just a few points to say, what would you say to them?
Great question. All disease and illness manifests energetically before it manifests in the physical body. And all of our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs sit in our energy bodies outside of the physical body. So for me, the greatest piece I would share would be to hold the belief you are more powerful than you believe, and know that you create your life.
Thank you. Carol.
So, I mean, that was beautiful, Sami, and I agree wholeheartedly. I can't really improve on that in any way. And it's something I've come to learn, and it's something that in my medical realm, I never had any exposure to. And when I went on my own exploration, I started to see just how much the disease in the physical body was a manifestation of something in the energetic body or the emotional body. And so I think for me, what I would want to say is, particularly for cancer, we're seeing that a lot of that manifestation is due to self-rejection or self-denial, denial of self-rejection of self. So often I want to say that the way to heal is to actually just live your truth wholeheartedly, whatever form that may take. And I find that along the way, there are a lot of patients who will, prioritize themselves lowest on the list, and they're either got a relationship that they prioritize before their own personal desires or health, or their children or professional goals. And I think I want to emphasize how important it is that we really do live what's in our hearts, rather than trying to cater to or adhere or comply with something we feel we're expected to do. And I feel that a lot of healing begins there.
I don't know what to say to that, because if people really heard that, what would happen? If people really heard that, what would happen? And I feel like saying, I'm asking you guys to be really brave here today. Even if I don't know if that needs to be said, but just in case it does need to be said, I'm asking you to be really brave here.
And I understand why you're asking us to be brave. And that's because sometimes hearing that can be something very difficult for someone to hear. And I'm always very careful about how I express that, because it would be absolutely against my intentions to give them a sense of blame or a sense that they brought it on for living in a particular way. But the reason I say it, or the reason I bring it up, is because it gives them now a choice to live differently moving forward. And it gives them another tool to use for their healing. And it's not going to be the only tool, but it's a huge part of the formula of tools. So I understand the delicacy of that conversation. And I'm very, very careful that people don't walk away feeling like they brought on their disease. It's more so to empower them to feel that they have some control over the outcome of their disease.
Really well said. And I think a really important point to have spoken about, blame and judging self is only going to dig the hole deeper. Blame and judgment does not create freedom.
No.
Energetic freedom, which is what you're talking about, that any illness begins in the energy body, begins energetically. So blame and judging ourselves is just going to dig that hole even deeper. I get that. That's not what you're talking about at all. It's about having
forgiveness.
Go for it, Sami.
Because it's about forgiveness and compassion. Forgiveness of oneself and compassionately surrounding yourself with the biggest, warmest love and hug, so that you can transcend.
So I'm just noting here, making really obvious the energy that's here in this conversation. Like, this is absolutely, if you want some medicine, here it is, right here, right now. And not everybody who's listening is going to have cancer or some form of serious illness, but even harmful or hurtful or unself-loving thoughts are part of what we're talking about. I recorded an episode last week called Super Presence, which is the name of our retreat next week. And I was thinking about, what's the difference between presence and super presence, because super presence came to me I did 2 hours of meditation last week on one day, and those words arrived. It was like, okay, that's okay. I hear it. That's the name of our retreat now. But why super presence and not presence? And the answer was, whenever we let go of our addictions, our habits, and our attachments, we're free, right? And when we let go of our addictions, habits, and attachments, it's like our presence becomes supercharged. When you've had that experience, it's like you have this shift, and then our presence is supercharged, and all of a sudden you've got, your intuition stronger, or you've got ideas coming, or synchronicities happen. And so I'm also holding space in this episode. As I said, it's not just about necessarily having cancer or some kind of terminal illness. It's also around our everyday attachments, addictions, and habits that we can be compassionate about, hold space for forgiveness. In Carol's words, hold space for acceptance, letting go of the attachment of what we thought we wanted, so that we can come to a place of peace. Yeah. So speaking of peace, where does peace belong in the context of illness?
Peace belongs in you.
Why do you say that, Sami?
It's always available to us. However, at times we choose to detach ourselves or cut ourselves off from receiving. And the peace, the deeper you connect into your heart space, that peace floods all of your cells and DNA, so that it is felt in your entire being. There's been, as you know, there's been lots of studies of group meditations where they've blessed and provided a lot of harmony and peace to different countries and sites in the world. And that peace, when you feel that peace in you, it's an extension. So you feel it in you. What is in one is in the whole.
And you know what? You're just the most perfect demonstration of someone who chooses peace regardless of what's happening on the outside. With where you've been at with your elderly parents lately, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to share about that, but I just would like to say that I really acknowledge that at a time when, it's really hard when we've got elderly parents and they're in hospital, they're in retirement villages, and our elderly parents' minds aren't doing what they used to do, and like it can be so chaotic. It can be so full of chaos and hurt and regret and remorse and holding on to the past and wishing we weren't where we're at in the present. And you're someone whose love is just boundless, and that boundless love is so rooted in the earth. Like, it's not up there in the sky floating around in denial. Like, you're absolutely present to humanity and to the humanity of your family. And I just really want to acknowledge that the power of you choosing peace in a time where most people would not choose peace is just really spectacular. And I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to say to that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it, at times throughout that stage, it was a little challenging, to be honest. However, emphatically, I knew that love and peace come first. And from that space, it's like the intention you set. You set the intention for how you wish your day to be, or the discussion, or with your clients, having that highest intention. When you set that intention for love and peace, it allows you to move within that space. And I felt so blessed through it all.
And I just need to say something there. And I'm sure, Carol, I can see you completely with me here. Who would say when their mother's in hospital with a serious operation, father's really not coping well, has had to go to home for a little while, and he's not coping in that home and turning up with behaviors that you've not seen before and really concerning behaviors? Who on earth would say, I felt really blessed in that situation? Who else would say that other than you? And what was the consequence of that? What was the consequence of seeing that situation as you being blessed?
So I could hold them in that space for them to be and process everything they needed in that moment. It didn't result in arguments or disruption, so to speak. There was still a lot of chaos and disruption on the peripheral, but in the center was love and peace. So it enabled them to heal, as we know, as a multidimensional being.
We almost need to be on video, seriously. just the smiles. Carol, go for it.
To continue the love fest on Sami. It's why I highly encourage people who find me to see you, because you also teach me to see hope in an otherwise, what appears to me in my medical mind, hopeless situation. And when you hold them in that light, you bring them into an outcome that from a medical perspective, I could never explain or determine was possible. Yeah, I just, not to over exaggerate it, but to me, you're a miracle worker. And I will put out there that you're right, it doesn't necessarily mean that they get complete resolution of disease or anything like that. But there is a multidimensional healing that occurs when they open up to the healing with you. And that is the healing that makes all the difference.
Is that why you do what you do, Carol, for the multidimensional healing?
How do you mean?
Well, you said, it may not necessarily mean that the cancer is healed, for example, or it may mean that the cancer is healed. But what you're saying is that you're able to hold space for a healing that's multidimensional, not just on the physical plane. I just wondered, is that why you do what you do for the multidimensional healing?
So I had absolutely never seen it that way. So what a gift you have given me in that comment. Yeah. I had never framed it in that way.
Okay.
Never.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Oh.
So now I'm going to create space here for you to really see where the multidimensional healing has occurred through the work that you've done, for you to appreciate you even more. And if there is something that comes to mind, to memory, about a situation where through eyes that see more than this physical, or beyond this physical plane, into the multidimensional, can you talk to us about an experience where you saw that healing on that multidimensional plane?
To me, there's one story that feels very poignant, and it's not my direct experience, but it's something that I try to bring into my experience with everyone that I meet now. So there was a very dear gentleman that I met very serendipitously, and this kind of also reflects on your question about peace as well, and where that fits in. And he had a very long history with his prostate cancer. And he was also very open to different concepts and not just the conventional medical model. And we sat and had a beautiful conversation where he was relaying to me the course of his journey with cancer. And there was one time where he got very deeply into meditation. And it was his intention that he meet the energy or the spirit of cancer. And so in this deep, deep meditation, he was expecting to meet some sort of dark, demonic energy. But instead, what arrived to him was one of the most loving energies he had ever experienced in his whole life. He did say that it was a feminine energy, which was also interesting. And he said to it, why? Why do you come? And this energy said, how else would I get you back on your path? So to me, I use that story because a lot of people will create a war between them and illness, whether it be cancer, whether it be an addiction, whether it be something that isn't terminal. And if we see it as a loving presence that's here to bring us into alignment with our greatest truth, then maybe that gratitude and that shift brings us a peace that brings us to our healing.
There's medicine right there, isn't it? It's almost like I could hear you speak out a formula. There's a formula in what you just said.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks for tying it back to the question about peace. It's perfect. And the three of us, we've hung out for a long time together. And we know the power of, at the end of the day, what that gentleman was saying, the cancer was, as that loving presence, was that cancer was able to bring, his view of cancer as being that loving presence was able to bring unconditional love into his life. Or what is present through the cancer, and also what could be present as a result of seeing the cancer as a loving presence. And the three, we have hung out very much in the seeing the divine perfection of things and being in unconditional love for what is. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, the source point of any shift that the three of us have experienced at the end of the day. Is that true? Just want to check in, actually. Nodding. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It is true for me.
Yeah.
And I think that continues to unfold. I think the deeper that I get down this path, the more I see that and the more I experience that. And the puzzle pieces start to fit together and I start to understand the divine unfolding or evolution of that. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Very nice, very nice. When I think about following the intuitive pull, and when I dissected even how I came to create this podcast, I came to a conclusion that when we follow the intuitive pull, we arrive at a place that we never believed that we belonged, but actually always did. Can you speak to that in your experience, where you arrive at a place where you never believed that you belonged, but in fact you always did? What's been your experience of that?
I love that. I love that question. For me, my experience when I began the healing journey and discovered pranic healing, the way it resonated in my being, it was so sincere and so loving. And for me to leave a corporate industry where I, had a lovely job and where I was.
And everybody loved you there too.
I discovered I didn't have to try anymore. This was the real me. So going from a workplace where you strive and meet targets and have objectives, and I still do that now, but from a whole perspective and creating space and allowing. So shifting from the striving to allowing. And at first, Giselle, I know we've had similar conversations as well, and you, Carol, too, of it's that unknown. And people are like, it's a little crazy or it's a little woo-woo. It's in the unseen. And that is where the power lies. But that's the truth. This is the real me, the essence of me. There's nothing that you need to pretend or force or make happen. Allowing everything to arrive. That's where the nectar is.
Beautifully, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about you, Carol?
I think for me, where I've reached explains a lot of where I've been and why I was there. So it gave it sense in a way that I had never understood it before. And so, for example, if I had had strange concepts in the past during my very conventional medical career, but explored those concepts, and as Sami described them, they may be woo-woo concepts. I didn't quite understand why I was the weird one who was interested in this stuff and would follow through. But now that I'm here, I can see that I was being educated all along the way, but it wasn't the traditional university degree. It was like life giving me what I needed for what was eventually going to become the toolbox that was necessary. And so there's that, and my personal experiences just, over, my lifetime so far that have again been my education to get me to a place where I feel like it's effortless. It just feels effortless. And I think that's how you've reached where you probably belong but never thought you'd be. Yeah.
It's interesting that both of you talk about, Sami, you said I realized I didn't have to try anymore. And then you talk about it feeling effortless. And I know exactly what you mean, because this feels the same for me, and also with coaching. And yet the journey to this place was not effortless always. Right? I mean, like, look at you, Carol, you left an amazing job here in Sydney, revered, well, respected, established, safe, by many standards, secure by many standards. And I remember at the time you were absolutely pulled to go and travel, right? And to go and explore different therapies, etc. So it wasn't at all effortless at the beginning, right? It required huge courage and huge detachment to let go of an identity of a version of you that you'd known yourself as. And I remember when I did that, when I left hotels, and people and I couldn't describe, just as you couldn't describe where this was going, because we didn't know at the time. We were just being pulled, and how people can't understand, and especially people that love us so much, they want to keep us safe, and and here we are completely letting go of something that in their mind is heaven on earth. So it requires huge, huge, huge courage. And I was thinking or reflecting when you were talking about your journey, about you have so much integrity, Carol, because you talk about how cancer is actually a loving presence to get you back on track. And the words that you used before were to follow your truth. And so you have so much integrity to hold space for that, because you've done it and continue to do it Yeah. So another question, which is an interesting one: who are you that makes inevitable results that matter the most to you? Who are you that makes inevitable results that matter the most to you? Don't be shy.
Yeah, so I'll start.
I felt for you to start, Carol.
Okay. The first thing that came to mind was just how deeply I care. So to me, it's how deeply I care. And I would hope that I care deeply enough that care itself is what creates the outcome that I envision. And now during this conversation, you've given me a perspective that I hadn't quite appreciated, which I'm really loving now, which is this desire for multidimensional healing and on a grander scale. And I just wonder if my desire and drive and vision towards that actually brings me to work with each individual in exactly the way that I hope brings about that outcome. Yeah.
What an answer.
Mm.
Wow. My smile's hurting. It's so big. My smile is hurting my face. It's so big right now. And, yes, because I care so much. Yes. And I've heard you say that before in different words. And I've not heard you say because of the multidimensional results that I'm now conscious to holding space for. So now that you're conscious to that, I mean, it already happened, and you were even unconscious to that. It's already happened. So now that you know that, just imagine what is being cooked up right now. I can't wait to speak to you next week because I know that you'll have stories to tell me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Great. Thank you. Sami.
For me, it's the boundless. So having no boundaries as such, that we're all completely connected, but it's so subtle in the energy. It's almost imperceptible. And it's so soft and so loving, but then it's also so direct and so powerful. It's like a complete paradox of who I am and with the healing. And it's that formless that creates the form of healing.
You know what I get with you, Sami? You so know that you're boundless. You so know that you are limitless. Like there's not even like a 0.001% disbelief in that. You just know that. So you just know that. And it reminds me of a story. I read this years ago, and I'm probably not going to have all the details correct, but it was a study where there were two classes and there were two teachers, and the teachers were told, this class A are really smart, super duper smart, talented, gifted, blah, blah, blah. Class B, not so. They're the slow ones, they're intellectually challenged, got social problems, blah, 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 blah. One teacher was assigned the A class, another teacher was assigned the B class. And then they studied the performance of the kids. And I don't know if it was 3 months or 6 months, I can't remember. But the kids whose teacher believed that they were geniuses, performance was genius. The kids who they were not so and were challenged, etc., performed that way. And it just illustrated the power of perception. The power of perception and what perception creates. And when I'm with you in the answer to that question, what makes who are you that makes inevitable results that matter the most to you? It's your undying commitment and conviction to knowing that who we really are is limitless. And at the same time, it's really also important to say that perception alone isn't enough as well, because people have to take personal responsibility. And you've spoken to me about that before. You put in your 100% and your clients have to put in 100%. It's just the way it is. I mean, that's just the way it is. And them in their taking responsibility, supported by you in your undying commitment and conviction that they are more powerful than their body or their belief systems or their habits or their addictions or their problems or their chaos or their crises, whatever, that they are limitless, that just creates that. It makes it inevitable. So I've just got to say, if it's not obvious, people are drawn to work with Sami. Bloody hell, go and do it. You don't have to live in Noosa. Sami also does sessions remotely, and I've had many sessions with Sami remotely, and they are equally as powerful as being in the presence of Sami, although it's always nice to be in the presence of you, but they're equally powerful. So if you've got stuff going on, man, geez, just go and contact Sami. Sami's details will be in the show notes. And equally with Carol, you know, if you have members of your family or friends that have cancer, or you've just been diagnosed with cancer, or you're being treated with cancer, and there's something calling you in this conversation, there's just something calling you, even if it does not make sense in the timeline of your cancer or of your family member or friend's cancer, even if it doesn't not make sense, but you're feeling called or pulled, there's something in this conversation. Do not doubt that calling and make connection with Carol. Make connection with Carol. I can't say it any more clearly other than shouting it. Is there anything that has not been said? Is there any unfinished business that you feel to say?
I just feel to add for the listeners to believe and trust in yourself wholeheartedly.
Yep. There's medicine right there. Go ahead.
Because we believe and trust in you as well.
Thank you, Sami. Carol, because I'm curious to know, has the unfinished business been resolved, or is there still something that wants to be said, or in addition?
The only other thing I'd love to say is for listeners to open up to the realm of healing beyond of that of just the physical, or that of what we've been taught is available. And to echo Sami, to live our truth wholeheartedly is the greatest disease prevention.
To live our truth wholeheartedly is the greatest illness prevention. Yeah. Thank you so much to both of you. I got to spend another hour with you, which I loved. Thank you for your bravery in really, putting a stake in the ground around what you know, which might be different to how other people think. Thank you for caring so much and for seeing people beyond their physical limitations. I love you both very much.
Thank you, Giselle. Thank you so much for the invitation and the space.
All right.
We love you too.
Oh, thanks so much, love and appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I had to come back on and record this little addendum to that interview with Carol and Sami. Wow, I just want to say how many gems were in that. Talk about medicine. And I'm going to say it again. If there are people in your world, or even you, that have cancer or have some sort of malaise, are not well, you have two people here on your team who see beyond being a victim to illness and who see illness as a great awakener. So please follow the intuitive pull. Also, I want to say thank you to those people who have told their friends and family and colleagues about this podcast. I really appreciate it. My goal is to get this out to as many people as possible. So please let your family, friends, and colleagues know about this episode in particular, if it has spoken to you, or about the podcast in general. Let's spread the love together in community with each other. I really appreciate and adore you, and thank you for the continual overflow of gratitude that I receive through messages from you telling me how the podcast has impacted your life in a positive way and how much you're enjoying it. I tell you, it fuels me. It really does. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Ciao for now.